Welcome to a Coburg Media special presentation. I'm Graham Beer. We're sitting down with David Piccini, MPP for Northumberland Peterborough South and Parliamentary Assistant to the Minister of Training, Colleges and Universities. Thank you, David, for sitting down with me today in your Queen's Park office in downtown Toronto. It's special for me to be in Toronto, but chatting with you today.
Yeah, thanks for being here, Graham. Excited to have you, and congratulations on your successes in school. This is exciting.
I think it's 9 months now you've been here at Queen's Park and representing the riding in our local communities. David, I want to start with your role as an MPP. I don't think a lot of people know the specifics and what your day and all your days entail. So tell us about that.
So it's been about, I would say, 8 months since getting sworn in and settling into the role. We were elected to represent and serve the people of our community. And as I said on election night, whether you voted for me or not, I'm honored to have the opportunity to represent our community of Northumberland Peterborough South. We have a very big community, of course, in Northumberland Peterborough South. 10 municipalities. We've got 2 First Nations communities, and it's been a whirlwind. In the first few days, you're getting used to the files. Readings literally the size of big binders, and you're getting accustomed on the legislation. Of course, we made a number of commitments in the election. We heard, after 15 years of to be frank, reckless fiscal mismanagement, we'd heard from people who are working harder, getting less. People in our community, our ag community, working hard every day, and life was just getting more and more difficult. The cost of everything was going up. So we got right to work, of course, with the Premier, took the historic step of resuming the legislature. We've introduced a number of pieces of legislation with a net benefit for our community, trying to make life a little more affordable, get government off our businesses' backs, reform our healthcare system, and ensure that we're creating the conditions for economic opportunity in rural Ontario, throughout Northumberland Peterborough South. I've received a number of emails, meetings. I'm out in the community in all corners of our riding. Someone had said just the other day, I think it's been 16 times up in Norwood alone. So it's a lot of days in the car, getting out, listening to folks in our community, ensuring I'm a strong advocate for their concerns, their issues at Queen's Park, and always accessible, just a phone call away. So I've been really humbled and honored. It's been an exciting whirlwind experience. I've been honored to have been given an appointment by Premier Ford, and have really enjoyed serving with my colleagues on all sides of the legislature, and looking forward for many months and years to come.
David, much in the news, of course, is your role in the OSAP changes. I first want you to go in depth and about your role as the Parliamentary Assistant to Minister Fullerton, and how you were part of those changes, and how it came to be.
Yeah, it came to be. Well, I've, of course, after getting appointed, working closely with Minister Fullerton, both she and I'm here to support the minister, support this office, and support our government with respect to the training colleges and universities. So that's all publicly funded post-secondary institutions, training programs. And, since day one, I've been out there meeting with student groups, meeting with university presidents, college presidents, training groups. Often people don't realize, but unions play an important role in the training. Our school boards, training groups. We've got Skills Ontario promoting the skilled trades. So it's been an exciting few months in this office. Of course, the ratio reduction, journeyman to apprenticeship 1-to-1, the orderly wind down of the College of Trades, the free speech on campus policy, and then, of course, most recently, what we heard across the board, what students have been advocating after 15 years of tuition hikes. Since 2006, tuition has doubled. We have the highest tuition in the country. And so we've acted immediately. We knew we inherited a $15 billion deficit and a much more substantial debt that this province is in. We knew we had to get to work to tackling that deficit. Part of that means tightening the belts. We've been in discussions with universities and colleges, but this historic reduction across the board for all students is unprecedented. The first time we've seen a 10% reduction of this magnitude across the board, much needed relief for students, reducing the cost One of the biggest concerns we heard was the barrier, just the sticker price of university and college. This has been a substantial reduction across the board. In undergraduate programs at University of Toronto, at Ryerson, you're going to see upwards in some programs of $1,000 reduction. This is going to be, very good. And giving students choice in their ancillary fees. Of course, we know the Auditor General's report on OSAP painted a very damaging picture. And Graham, what I would say to you and all of the students is that our future is in jeopardy, not just yours, but our future generations, when we mortgage and fundamentally jeopardize the sustainability of a program that's meant to be there to support those who need it most. Under the Liberals, we saw grants for millionaires, the most wealthy among us receiving grants across the board. It's fundamentally jeopardized the sustainability of the program. The Liberals were of course, the cost of the OSAP program implementation at the very end of their mandate was 50% greater than the Liberals had predicted, according to the AG and according to our provincial numbers. So, I think the voters weren't fooled by a number of last-ditch promises made at the very end. Unfortunately, those promises were ill thought out. And would have jeopardized this OSAP program. So we made important changes to ensure that a greater percentage of OSAP grants are there for those who need it, and that as you make your way up the income ladder, both family and or individual, you take a greater stake in that education. But the point is that the OSAP grants are there for those who need it.
Now I want to just take a step back with the 10% cut of tuition.
Yes.
How will that impact universities directly? 90% or a number around there, those of a university or college's or post-secondary budget is fixed. And that extra amount is for additional services and that make up a university or college experience. How will the 10% cut at a student's tuition be impacted in those terms?
So this is about equivalent to anywhere between a 2% and 4% cut for universities and colleges. And so, as we said, after year of raising tuition on the backs of students, we across the board, in government, in businesses, and day-to-day life, we're all finding efficiencies. And the tightening of the belt, universities, we've spoken with them to day one. I think this has been done in a manner, of course, that benefits students, but also a tightening of the belt of our universities and colleges. And we make no apologies for putting students first, for ensuring that we provided this much needed relief, and making the cost more attainable for those Ontario students across the board. So is there a tightening of the belt? Yes. We're working with our universities across the board. We're working with them on program approvals. We're working with them on funding. We're working with, of course, a reserve fund for our northern colleges and universities that will be a little more affected. And that's not just by this decision, of course. Our northern colleges and universities are affected by decisions at large, by just their remote nature of where they are. And we're working with them to ensure, they're places of innovation, to ensure people are choosing the north and ensure that we're supporting post-secondary education in Ontario.
With your announcement as well, you talked about letting students choose the ancillary fees.
Yes.
With those ancillary fees, including student organizations, student media, and other groups that make the life and the culture of a university or college, when you let students do that, do you think that some of the services and some of the organizations within a university or college would be either eliminated or really cut back where it won't be maintainable?
Well, I think what we've done here is give students choice. We saw runaway ancillary fees at some universities over $2,000. And what that difference is, when I coached the men's soccer team at University of Ottawa, we would do preseason trips to State University of New York, Potsdam, Clarkson. And the guys would come to me and they would say, Coach, I can't come. The cost because of the costs we assumed of preseason were outside of the budget. And they said, we can't come. We can't afford the dinner, we can't afford the hotel, etc. That's the difference when we're talking about $50, $100 for students in these ancillary fees. That's the difference. And where I would say we're non-negotiable is on health and safety, critical programming. Unfortunately, I think over the past while we've seen downloading from the university for operating grants that we provide the university for critical services, libraries, other things. We've seen a downloading of that to student groups, and so in effect, it's double the funding. So we're working with universities and student groups on the Student Choice Initiative, but putting students first. They're adults. They make choices. In my day-to-day life, I don't prescribe my culture on you. You don't prescribe yours on me. We live in a diverse culture. Here in Canada, we embrace our diversity. We've got, we make our choices in our day-to-day life. And why are students any different from that? I know there are some who I'm sure are upset about this, and you know why they're upset? They're upset because they know their very existence on the backs of 10, 20, 30,000 students prescribing their special interests and interests that have no value to enrich the student experience are in jeopardy, and you're darn right they are. We've empowered students here to make choice, and we have confidence as adults. They will make decisions to benefit them, to enrich their student experience. And again, those health and safety programs are here to benefit everyone, and those are non-negotiable.
You mentioned about how students are upset. We saw in the news that
some.
Yes. For those students who are upset and for those who agree with this position as well, of course, there's always two sides to a new policy coming out. I want to know, through your process of the changes, how did the government reach out to students and really understand what the student experience is like now in 2019?
It's a great question. So when we got elected, I mean, what people often forget in this is that decisions aren't made in isolation. I don't, every time we change a paragraph, introduce legislation, go out to the community and say, what do you think of this? Can we change it? Can we do this paragraph? Broad consultations occur in the election. People take a referendum on the direction the province is heading. When we got elected, we got right to work, meeting with student groups. I spoke at USA when they were here, College Student Alliance. I got out on a number of campuses. And from that feedback, we draft our legislation. So some of the feedback we heard, runaway tuition costs, highest tuition, we had to do something about it. We heard from everyday students who are working 2-3 jobs, who are playing on the sports teams, who are in arts and culture and drama. They're saying, you know what? Dave, these $2,000 or these runaway student fees, they're hurting the pocketbook. I work 2-3 jobs. I work all summer to save up, and I'm an adult now. I vote. I did or didn't vote for you, but the point is I voted. You give me responsibilities. I'm an adult. Why can't I have responsibility in choosing some of these ancillary fees? And so throughout that feedback that we'd received on campuses from families, in our discussions with universities, with faculty associations, we put forward a package of substantive proposals that we believe are reflective of that feedback that we've received, and that give something for everyone in this, that support students, that support families that are supporting students, those who don't have that support, and give them more choice. So it's consultation across this province, both myself, the minister, and of course all of our MPPs that's fed into this decision.
I think as the news has come out, it's created a conversation and a platform for students to really understand the future for their education. For the students who perhaps have marched to Queen's Park or all across Ontario, and those students who are politically invested in the process, what is your message to those students who are concerned about the future of all Ontarians?
Well, my message is that you've got a government that's here, that's listening. My message is that you've received a 10% reduction across the board that no government has ever had the courage to do. You've received choice in your ancillary fees. What I would say to those students, though, is that when you go to university, there is a cost. There is a cost. The room you're in, the buildings you're in, the heating, the capital maintenance costs of the buildings you enjoy, the lecture halls, the athletic facilities you participate in. There is a cost to that. The hoodwinked notion that university was free was a fundamental disservice to you, to every student out there. And it was a last-ditch, desperate attempt by a very desperate former premier to get reelected. And what I would say to you is I would say, please recognize that at your own personal gain, you cannot jeopardize the sustainability of programs who are there for future generations. That when you look at OSAP levels, grants to loans ratios, federally, we have 78% loans-based, not grants-based. In Ontario, in 2016-17, we were 68% grants to loans. In 2019, I don't know if you or others know the numbers, it's over 80% grants-based. So under Premier Ford, from 2016-17 to today, we've seen a 20% increase in the grants. Last year is the outlier year. I think when people look at it, I would ask them that this was a change made, again, by a government deeply unpopular in the polls. And we know their record on fiscal prudence. We know their record on spending. And it's a record Ontarians didn't trust. So what I would say to students is please look at that. Look at hydro. Look at the hydro plan that was mortgaging the future of future generations at the expense of a minor reduction today, saddling our future. That's what they were doing with OSAP. We can't stand by and watch the sustainability of an important structure be jeopardized in that manner. So we have a sustainable program here that supports those that need it the most. Yes, Graham, everybody's going to take a stake in their university, but that substantively speaking, 90% grants based for those who need it most. Families under 50K, individuals earning under 30K, and then for those who graduate who, out of no fault of their own, can't find that job, or, Graham, who are working minimum wage, will receive access to the repayment assistance program. So it's important to note. And then for those who have gainful employment, as myself and so many I've spoken to, you start repaying back that loan.
And also you mentioned about the 6-month grace period and how that's being eliminated.
Just to clarify, yes. Grace period is not being eliminated on loan repayment. The interest will accrue on day one. That's an important distinction because a lot of people have said, oh, you're getting rid of the grace period for repayment. I have to repay on day one. Not true. It's the interest on the loans.
Yes, okay. I wanted to clarify that because that was, I think, confusion after the announcement. Okay.
Yeah.
And now, after the changes, and as you mentioned about the free tuition aspect, no matter the sustainability or not, for students who have relied on that, going to school, this year, last year, and in previous years, who have counted on that, and now are going to realize a shift in the way they approach their funding for university or colleges. What do you want to say to those students, or do you have any advice or just a message to those students who look at this with grave concern? Are they going to go to school next year? There's a lot of concern about their immediate future, and I just want you to address that.
Well, I would think the enrollment, this notion that we've paved, that the decisions the Liberals made paved the way for a massive increase in enrollment is just not true. The stats don't bear that out. We've spoken to universities across the board. What that program again did was provide grants for the wealthiest among us. Have we said you got to take the wealthiest among us a little more of a stake in it? Yes. But again, to ensure the sustainability of the program. So for those, I would say, that in this province we have an OSAP structure that has ballooned over the course of the last number of years, more than double the next highest province. And we need to ensure that it's sustainable. So I would say look left, look at students right in that room and say, do you want a sustainable future for those very same people in 5-10 years down the road? And I hope we can all acknowledge that the need of ourselves in the immediacy, our needs doesn't outweigh the needs of society at large in the long term. And for the benefit of those in society who need that support, in the long term, we made a commitment to restoring trust and accountability and fiscal prudence in this province. And in order to do that, point to the experts, look at the Auditor General's report. We made a commitment to Ontarians to ensuring the integrity of this program in the long run. And I would say, please look beyond your own immediate needs to those of people who will follow in your footsteps. And make sure that we have a program there that's there for them and for our next generation.
Well, I want to thank you for all your work, and I know you've been working hard about these new changes, and I know it's must have taken a lot of planning and initiative for that. So So thank you for all your steps with that. I want to move now locally.
Yes.
For the Northumberland Peterborough South riding. In 2018, in December, you announced acts and protocol to assist the hallway healthcare initiative. Just touch on that and how you're improving healthcare in our riding.
So, I mean, we know our healthcare system was really at a breaking point. Over the past number of years of having worked in healthcare, I'd seen the bureaucratization of our healthcare system. We'd seen decision-making taken out of the hands of our healthcare professionals. We'd seen an increasing layer upon layer of administrative levels influencing our healthcare system. And a system that was really at a breaking point, long-term care. We have an aging population, of course, in Northumberland, Peterborough South, more so than so many other ridings. So to take immediate action, I mean, I've sat down at length with both hospitals. And in fact, just the other day, I sat down with Northumberland Hills. I had a great round table with the executive under the leadership of Linda and the team there. They're doing a remarkable job, Varouge at Campbellford Memorial, and listening to the executive team, listening to healthcare professionals, listening to our allied health professionals, our nurse practitioners, our doctors, our physicians, has been an important part of this. Everyone who works in the hospital, I don't care in what capacity you're in, I want to hear from them. So that's underpinned the start of this. We, of course, announced 4 additional acute care beds to support the surge in ER and the lack of beds, of course. We announced additional investments into long-term care that benefit both in Cobourg and in Norwood in our riding at Pleasant Manor, 35 additional beds up in the most northeastern portion. And then our latest announcement at Campbellford Memorial, this is an aging hospital that hasn't had a significant investment. And Graham, I think this is really important to note, as Varouge said at the announcement, this was the most significant announcement Campbellford Memorial has received in over a decade. $1.7 million of HERF funding to improve the HVAC system, to improve airflow in the hospital. You know, as the CEO said, and this was quite astonishing when I got the tour and when I was looking. I mean, I'm yet to get the detailed tour, but I have had a brief tour. But the only airflow was windows, and of course, as it's been in the last week, minus 30 degrees, you don't have that. So just imagine that, and I mean, that is not the level of care patients expect in our community. So it starts with making the much needed initial investments. Of course, the minister, myself, all of our caucus colleagues are looking at broader transformational reform to the system to ensure that, you know, we're reflective of the needs. Of course, the needs in Toronto are not the same needs in Northumberland, Peterborough South, and we must have a system that reflects that. We must have a system that encourages our healthcare professionals to practice in rural Ontario, that listens to them, that brings them out. We have one of the greatest communities. Of course, I think we're both a bit biased in that, in the province, but we want to ensure that we're attracting healthcare professionals to serve in our communities, that we're funding and supporting those placements, and that, of course, we're supporting retirement living, long-term care living, that's alleviating the pressure on the ER, that we're tackling upstream, the MHeart initiative, mental health, that we've seen locally is an important step in that, tackling the challenges upstream before they get to the acute cases that send people into the emergency room. So these are the steps we've taken, making, you know, substantial investments into our local community was important for me to advocate for our community, to ensure that not only are we taking those steps to address the system, but we're making initial investments to support immediate patient-centered care in our community. And I've really benefited and enjoyed from my engagement within our healthcare community, and have benefited from the working relationship that I have with the professionals.
One last question before we wrap this up. What do you think our future has for Northumberland Peterborough South? What do you see? You've got 3 years left in your term, almost a little bit more than 3 years. You've done a lot so far. A lot of changes have been made with the Ford government. What do you see in the near future for Northumberland Peterborough South?
Well, I see a lot of excitement in our future. We, of course, have a vibrant agriculture community. It's our number one employer. We've set the conditions in Ontario for increased investments. And Graham, I've got to tell you, the number of businesses I've spoken to, Minister Todd Smith, Economic Development, have spoken to, are now interested in looking east. We're seeing amazing growth beyond the GTA, looking east. we're seeing that. But what sort of growth do we want in our community? We have a beautiful rolling hills, a vibrant agriculture community. We are rural. We need to preserve that, but we also need to create the conditions of economic opportunity to support job creation. That means moving beyond a minimum wage economy, creating high value, high quality jobs. Advanced manufacturing is growing in our community and will continue to grow under our government. We've created the conditions for increased investment where companies are now choosing to invest in Ontario and looking to Northumberland, Peterborough South. I'm working on a couple exciting announcements to come in the future on that, working with a number of businesses. We've held amazing SME, small medium enterprise roundtables in our community. I've been working with our chambers. So I think we'll see increased growth so that you, I, others, those who are wanting to start a small family will do so in our community, will stay, live and work. Affordable housing, Graham, a big issue. We've, again, tackling that backlog in supply so that we can have affordable housing in our community, so that the notion of being able to, of home ownership is more attainable and not in our parents' basements or spare bedrooms, and attainable housing and those the true affordable housing, I should say, those who cannot afford the market level, that we're making the supports, that we're supporting the county in that, and that we're creating the conditions so that those who really need that affordable housing, that it's there, that we've increased the supply, and those in the middle class who are looking at that home ownership, that we increase the supply for them, and finally I would say healthcare and our agriculture community, that we're standing by rural Ontario. So often we see decision making made out of the big city and with little benefit to our rural community. That's not true. We've seen that under this government, that we're listening. I just attended ROMA, Rural Ontario Municipal Association. I met with the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus and the regional network, and they've said, that we finally have a government that's listening to rural Ontario, that's acting, broadband expansion, that's looking at transit infrastructure, recent announcement we just made, supporting healthcare, rural care, new rural models of healthcare delivery, and attracting investment east of the city and into rural Ontario. That's what we're going to see. I'm really excited, looking forward to working with everyone. So it's going to be a bright future, and in Ontario, again, of course, that's open for business, and in Northumberland, Peterborough South, that's open for business, and I'm really excited for the weeks, months, and years ahead.
Well, thank you, David. I see on your desk here you have the tagline "For the People." I encourage you to keep talking with our riding and students across the province who are very invested in the OSAP changes, who are very interested in the process. And I really do appreciate you sitting down with me today in your office in Toronto. You have a busy day ahead of you, so I will let you go. But thank you for talking with our Cobourg Media viewers who are, again, very interested in the political process here at Queen's Park, but also in our local riding of Northumberland, Peterborough South.
Thanks for your time and everything you're doing, Graham. Thank you.
Well, thank you, David. Appreciate it. Thank you for watching Cobourg Media. I'm Graham.